this really all started with like, Richard Hart, obviously the ethos of him for a long time has been like, hey, exchanges suck. Why deal with exchanges? They charge you money to list the tokens. It's not decentralized. People lose their money on there. I mean, all things that are objectively true, really. But the great debate about it does rage on, whether we need them for specifically this ecosystem or not. And we know that other layer ones like Cardano and things like that over the course of time, Phantom, have been on different exchanges, Solana, all these different ones, and are largely traded on there and don't have their volume primarily on DEXs. So maybe we could, let's first maybe start with, I'm trying to see which way to start. Let's start with the MEXC part of this, because this dates back for a while where Crypto Coffee and some other people really, and I didn't know this, but Panos, who was on with Corey Costa earlier today, he's at Strident Citizen on Twitter, and I've followed him for quite some time. But MEXC, originally, there was money raised to provide liquidity for Pulse to get a listing on MEXC. I think it was into the six figures, although I found out today that only apparently 60,000 of that or so was an actual payment to them, I believe, about half of it.
Yep.
So MEXC had listed Pulse and then delisted it months after Coffee. And again, those others did raise money to get it listed. And allegedly, we saw on Twitter, we're asking for more money to relist it again or additional funds. I think it was not, I forget how much, 60 to 90,000 again or
60.
something like 60.
No,
Okay.
there's another 60.
So we saw that led obviously the hornet's nest of this community to come out and say like, well, we've already paid you guys. What are you asking for more money? We don't need MEXC. Fuck you guys. All this stuff that does happen. And honestly, like I was kind of aboard that as well, because, as somebody that hasn't even ever used MEXC, didn't know too much about it, and seeing them take that action, you're used to, I get people being, turned off by this community being that hornet's nest, but also when you've been gate kept by other things, it's kind of what you come to expect. So I understand both sides here. To that point, and we'll get further into the MEXC thing in the Corey Costa interview with Panos today, Richard is now actively campaigning, seemingly, for exchanges. So the community's been doubling down on getting listings. And yes, I can see the hypocrisy in that. Panos talked about it today. All these people like, we don't need exchanges, we're DeFi, and all these different things. And then the minute that Richard Hart tweets about it, it's like, hey, Kraken, Coinbase, list us. So I get it, and I've probably been slightly a hypocrite as far as that stuff has gone as well. Do you want to show Richard's tweet just real quick? Yeah, there it is. Okay. So he said, PulseChain just won big in court. It's not a security and has had flawless operations since 662 days ago. A top on-chain DEX volume chain in the world, 47,000 validators, over 100 million bridged in, and deca millions of stables. Now's the time for you to contact only these I like how he did say this. Only these large entities to support PulseChain. Small exchanges get hacked too often. It's easy to integrate an ETH fork and has a couple of great free RPCs too. Of those, I wish Kraken would list first, as I've heard good things about their support and their founder. Coinbase is doing great with lobbying, large cold wallets, and then he lists off basically exchanges that have gigantic cold wallets. Binance, OKX. I don't even know who some of these are, honestly, crypto.com, things like that. KuCoin. So, yeah, he tags like a bunch of major exchanges, talks specifically about Kraken and Coinbase. That leads everybody to kind of flock and fill out and I've done this before for a Kraken, Binance, a lot of the other ones, the listing request on the website. Right. I think we've already seen multiple Kraken ones come back saying, sorry to disappoint you, but we're deciding not to list it at this time. I mean, who knows? That happens to different people individually and stuff like that. There's a lot. Yeah, Kraken seemed to reject multiple users' requests to list Pulse. Which a lot of people get upset with because we've seen like Dave Portnoy's memes get listed on Kraken. So there's that. And there's a lot here. I want you to respond to all of it. But my last question to you before we get into all of it is, do they really dislike Richard this much? Because now there's nothing really in the way in terms of the SEC. And I didn't know this, but Panos said this on that stream today. XRP was delisted by quite a number of exchanges when the SEC stuff started, actually.
Yeah,
so
I remember that.
I did not know that. So good to know. So is it the dislike of RH, the disdain of RH, the way this ecosystem is it the users in the ecosystem? And quite frankly, just like the behavior on Twitter and the hornet's nest mentality, because Panos, in that interview with Corey Costa today, pretty much seemed to indicate that as far as MEXC went anyway, it's like, hey, this is one of our main forms of advertising, and you guys are out here like dragging us through the mud now, So
Well,
there's a lot of things here. So
there's a
whatever.
lot to unpack. Yeah.
Yeah. Where would
So
you start?
the first thing that I think a lot of people didn't understand was, well, all right, let's back up. Whenever the $120,000 was raised and given to them for the initial onboarding, the way Panos said it, 60,000 of that was for integration. It goes to integration, it goes to setting it up the chain, it goes to marketing, it goes to a lot of things. That is their listing fee. That has already been paid. What they were asking for was the other 60,000, and I never knew this before. So the other 60,000 was liquidity. So according to Panos, when you, as a lister, the ones who pay to list it usually also supply the liquidity. They do that with a account login specific type thing where you are considered a funder of the liquidity. You have a login. People, whether I don't know if they choose to do multi-sig or something like that, or if only one person has access to it. That seems a little shady to me. But either way, you have access to that liquidity that gets entered and thrown into the pool, so that and then you give the market maker, they're basically bots, the opportunity to use those funds to trade your token, right? That's how these guys make their money. All of these exchanges use trading fees to generate a revenue. Well, apparently when they delisted it because of the SEC news, whoever had control of that pulled, and I think at that point it had gone down substantially, probably from 60,000 to 40,000. They pulled the remaining liquidity. So somebody still has that $40,000, or whatever it may be worth now. It could be 30 for all I know, because of the value of the token. You split it as far as USDC or USDT, whatever. It has to have an equal pair. You have to put in as much stable coin as you do the token. So it was 30 and 30 of PulseChain and whatever stable it was. When they delisted it, that money got pulled out of that account. So the funding account was empty. I do believe that was where the big misunderstanding came from, is they were asking for that funding back into the account, so it could be listed. Now, originally, when they asked for more money, I think Panos even admitted that he was a little confused too.
Yeah.
We already paid you guys. Why do you want more money to relist it? Well, then he had a conversation with them. And a lot of people don't know this. I mean, I just heard about it for the first time today too. So I get why people were pissed off. Like, why would we pay you again when we've already paid you? It seems like extortion to me. And as much as this community has been, kicked and beaten around by people for the past 5 years, essentially, I can see why people get so defensive. I completely understand. You don't want to put up with it. I mean, you feel like, you're the beaten redheaded stepchild, and it's not a good feeling. So I think people need to understand that that's not the case. And yes, you want to be nice to people, but when you're getting shit on, it's hard to be nice to people, right? So there's that line where they're like, well, now they're considering it if we're nice to them, as long as we can change the attitude and the wording and stop bad mouthing them, they'll consider it. So that's essentially where we are. That funding wallet needs to be refunded. I guess it's going to take more money now because it's probably only half the value, or what the foundation did with it, who knows. So I guess that's kind of where we sit with that. As far as who was the other? I know Hexologist also submitted an application, and they were looking for a signature, which Brett quickly responded and said, "We don't have a, this is
Right.
DeFi. You shouldn't need a signature.
I think a
Let's
lot of them ask for that because I've filled out the Binance one before, and they want this stuff that nobody could answer. Like there's no way to fill any of it out. I know what you mean. Yeah.
right, right. I get it. I mean, Hexo should have just signed it and said he's the CEO.
I
That
think
would have
that's
been
just yeah, I think that's just how those forms are, and it's
right.
usually because it might be like more centralized products usually that are coming. But in terms of and Robert Online, appreciate that, man. Really appreciate the super chat. Thank you
Hey,
for
thanks,
watching.
Robert.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I don't sorry, I don't recall you being here before, but I appreciate you watching, man. Really appreciate
Yeah, we got Super
it.
Hex, Johnny Chaos. Looks like the gang's all here.
We do. Wow, look at that. Everybody's in here right now. So yeah, and Super Hex, we might actually get to this point, buy them off the market. Yeah. So yeah, it's really I was really enlightened by this Pano stuff today, and I was glad that he came on to talk about that. And
Mhm.
I get it. I mean, and look, they're the exchange. I mean, they can decide anything that they want to list at any
Sure.
given time. They can decide any reason that they want to list something or not. I mean, they're the ones that are paid money to end up listing tokens.